Hey, I'm Will at Methodical, and today I'm going to talk about pulling a shot of espresso. Not knowing how to dial an espresso is kind of like driving a stick shift car, but not knowing how to shift gears. You can go one speed, but you really can't make any changes as necessary. And I say this all the time, but I really like to have my home base. I've said it before in other videos, and I just really think it's important because there are so many variables that go into dialing in coffee. It's the amount of coffee you're using, the grind size of the coffee, and how much water you're pulling through the coffee, and the time in which you're doing all that. So all those variables can come together and just get really confusing. So I know my home base is 18 grams of coffee in the portafilter, 36 grams out, and I like to pull that shot within 28 and 32 seconds. And that's just my home base that I go to. So when I'm first getting on to the bar, whether it's an espresso bar at home or if I'm at the cafe, first thing to do is pull a shot. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pull a shot, and then after the shot pulls, I'll taste it, and we'll talk about what changes we need to make and why. Okay, let's see what we got. That was 28 seconds, and I pulled out 38.5 grams of espresso. So when I'm talking about yield, how much espresso, the difference between 36 grams and 38.5 grams of espresso is very minimal, but it pulled kind of fast on the faster end of my variables. I'm gonna taste it. To me, this espresso, it tastes a little bit sour and just generally kind of weak. And that sourness and that weakness is telling me that the coffee is under extracted. The water flowed through the bed of coffee grinds too fast. So my next step is to think about what I'm gonna do. There are so many things I could do, but I'm only gonna adjust one variable at a time, because then I won't know if the variable I adjusted made the difference that I wanted. My go-to adjustment is grind size first. So I'll keep my recipe the same. I'm still gonna use 18 grams of coffee. I'm still gonna pull a 36 gram shot, and I want it to be between 28 and 32 seconds. So I'm gonna adjust the grind and see what happens. The big part about adjusting your grind size, on most coffee grinders, when you're adjusting the grind, you need to have the grinder turned on, because what I'm doing is I'm making the burrs get closer and closer together. And if the grinder's not turned on, the burrs will crush the beans that are already between them, and it'll jam the burrs up and the grinder won't work. So I usually you can use your portafilter or any kind of receptacle. I'm gonna turn the grinder on a little bit, make it slightly finer so that it pulls slower, restricting the flow of water through the bed of coffee, and hopefully we'll get the desired result. Okay, whether you're going coarser or you're going more fine, it's really important to purge the grinder out with 1 or 2 doses of coffee before you pull another shot, because there's a lot of residual coffee left from the grinding burrs to the chute where the coffee comes out, and you want to push that through so that when you adjust it, you're only using the new grind size. Okay, so I did 1 purge. I think for this grinder, that's sufficient for my grind adjustment. So what I'm gonna do is pull another shot of espresso and measure all my parameters and taste it and see the end result. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. I adjusted this grinder very small amount. And as opposed to a shot of espresso, now I have this. This is about 8.5 grams of coffee. A big lesson here is grind size adjustment needs to be very incremental, because I adjusted it just a small amount and now I have to pay the consequences. That is wild. Okay, I needed to tighten up the grind to restrict the flow of water through the coffee bed because the espresso came out too fast. I tightened up the grind, I pulled my shot, and then in the same amount of time, I got like a quarter of what I got before. I adjusted the coffee grind way too much, so I need to meet it somewhere in the middle. This is bitter and astringent and just makes my mouth pucker so much. I need to hit the sweet spot where there is body and sweetness and structure, just a well-rounded shot. So since this came out way too slow, I'm gonna slightly make my coffee a little bit more coarse, allowing the water to flow a little more freely through the bed of coffee grinds. Okay. So that was about 29 seconds, and I'm right at about 37.5 grams of espresso. I want to recap. I've only adjusted the grind size this whole time, and I've had drastic changes in my espresso. My ultimate goal is to get sweetness and complexity out of coffee. So if it is under extracted and watery, I'm making the grind more fine. That'll slow the flow of water through the coffee, increasing the extraction. And if I get an espresso that comes out very, very slowly, ends up being bitter and astringent, and it's over extracted, then I'm going to make the grinds more coarse, which frees up the flow of water through the coffee bed, decreasing the extraction slightly. So I'm going to taste this. It's sweet, it's complex, there's a really good body to it. It's not astringent like the last shot, my last 8-gram shot that I just pulled. And so coarsening up the grind there really helped to free the flow of water through the coffee bed and decrease extraction a little bit, but it allowed me to get a full 36-gram shot in the time period that I wanted. And now it is just everything that I wanted it to be. The other shot, too extracted, very bitter and very astringent. The first shot, not extracted enough, sour, watery, flat, and this is the sweet spot. Just took a couple of adjustments. That is the grind size. That is when I'm only trying to adjust one variable and keep all my other variables constant. If I find that I keep adjusting the grind size, keep my same recipe of 18 grams of coffee in, 36 grams of espresso out in about 28 to 32 seconds, and nothing's working, what I'll try to do, my next step, is to adjust the dose of the coffee, and just by 1 gram. So instead of 18 grams, if I want to extract more coffee, what I would actually do is use less. So instead of using 18 grams, I might use 17 grams, and that allows the water to focus on a little bit less coffee and extracts it more fully. If my coffee is a little too extracted and none of my grind changes are making a difference, I might use a little bit more coffee, say 19 grams instead of 18 grams, and that allows more coffee to be present with the same amount of water, leading to a little bit less extraction. And I think that's all I have for you.